Hey YouTube! It's time for a deck review of the Dark Days Tarot, which is by Wren McMurdo. By the way, I have a slightly different setup that I'm taking advantage of for these deck reviews because my roommates are out of town. I can use the dining table. And if you really love the spread cloth, which I sure do, it's amazing. FYI, it's from Sparks Creations. You may have heard of Peggy Bags. Peggy is Lisa of Supportive Tarot's wife, and she does amazing bags and spread cloths at Sparks Creations on Etsy. That's Sparks with an X. So definitely check her out if you are looking for bags and spread cloths. So this deck is one of my favorites. I used it a ton in December when I kind of needed a good like void or shadow deck, but I also use it all the time, often with moons. It has a very lunar feel. It's great for working with moon cycles. What a lot of people, of course, comment on is that it is a square deck, and that is certainly part of it, but to me, actually not that huge part of it. So you'll see it's a nice, sturdy, lidded box, and you get a guidebook included, little kind of squat square guidebook. In the guidebook, there are, so it does start with, there is a little like sheet on card directions if you're not used to reading with a square deck. It gives you Wren's advice for how to do it, although I think it does note like you can really do it however you want to, but they suggest like if you want to do lunar phases, then upright would be full moon energy, manifestation, affirmation. I also just read this is sort of the standard upright. If the card is rotated to the right, that's last quarter waning moon energy, so completion and reflection. If it's reverse, new moon energy, renewal, rest, retirement, reversal. Again, I just generally read that as the reversal. And then left, if it's rotated to the left, then that's first quarter waxing energy, so more hustle and development. So those are the two, right and left, that like I always have to kind of check this again. Right, kind of completion, reflection, left, kind of hustle and development. There's a little explanation of numerology in the tarot, and then gets right into the major arcana. So I do like that there are the pictures of the images do show up in the guidebook. For each one, you actually get keywords for all four directions, which may be helpful if you're learning to read with the square cards. And just a real like brief paragraph here. I haven't spent a ton of time, to be honest, with the guidebook, so I can't, I would say in good faith, necessarily review the guidebook, but I do like that it gives sort of some keywords to all the different directions. Also, if you are needing a reminder, there's another little directional cheat in the back with some different possibilities for how you might read in each direction. And then there are also a couple of very basic spreads in the back. So that's the guidebook. Cards themselves, they are a glossy stock. I find them really easy to shuffle, and I actually find that when I'm shuffling these cards overhand, they sometimes kind of naturally turn as I shuffle them, which I like. They'll turn at like 90 degrees, which I'm not really showing it here very well, but it's kind of hard to shuffle at this angle with the camera. But they will, yeah, like that one kind of fell to the side, but they will turn naturally at 90-degree angles, which is great since all of the angles are valid in this. You can see this four directions, all the same kind of backing to support that. It does have silver gilding. And so I said when I started that like the point is not that they're square, and I really do feel that the square thing is cool, but what I really, really love about this deck is the imagery itself. So when there are figures, they're fairly diverse. There is a range of like human figures and more sort of nature imagery, but I find that a lot of the imagery are just interesting and provocative for the meaning. They make me think more about that meaning, about what that could mean, what that card could mean. Like here, the devil, you can see she's kind of, her eyes are, sorry, I have to look at the card and show you, but her eyes are flowers. She's breathing out smoke, and then she is holding this triangular kind of mask with more human eyes and a moon for a mouth. And I just, like, I could think about that for so long. What does it mean that the face is almost transposed off the face into a mask in the context of the devil and everything the devil means about ego and the self? Here's justice. A lot of the majors are just really confronting. I will say one thing that is a little, like, if I had any complaint about this deck, which I really don't have that many, oh, I love templates, it would be the writing is kind of small print cursive, and it's a very like handwriting feeling, and sometimes it's a little hard to read, especially on the black cards. You will notice that the minors are all black, the majors are white background to distinguish, but sometimes I find the white writing on the black background is just a little more challenging to clearly read, so I will have to kind of put my face a little closer. I love this Seven of Pentacles, instead of the bush being like the plant almost growing from the pages. So the idea of like work that you do, it's not, you know, necessarily in nature, but it could be a written work coming to fruition, and having to be patient about that. Like, it's just some really fun. I love this Judgment card because I like that the smile, like it feels like a less harsh interpretation. I just love that kind of forgiving. I feel like that facial expression of the figure at the top is very like forgiving and loving and gentle. And I think that is what, honestly, for me, judgment is not the harsh Judeo-Christian form of judgment. It's hard, it's tough, it's all the questions you have to answer before you get to the world, but it's also a kind of release and relief. This Seven of Wands with the moon for the head, and the kind of, are they dandelions? I think they're dandelions. Is great. This is one of my all-time favorite Hermit cards. You'll notice that some of these cards are going to come back up as I'm doing my Tarot Studies series, because a lot of my favorite cards are going to be from this deck. I love the way the Hermit is just spiraling in and on its shell, because it makes me think of the way self-development work and exploration work that happens in the Hermit. It is very internal, and it's also, it doesn't have an end, right? It keeps going around and around and around, and there's more and more layers to uncover of yourself as you do that work. Also, there's like moon phases with the shell. So I love the idea that it's just, the cycle keeps going and going. Like, this is a perfect representation for me of the Hermit. You can see there's a lot of nature imagery, mountains, water, flowers. There's a lot of kind of eyes and moons. Does have a very, to me, very lunar feel. This, I like the Knight of Swords. There's not, I think it's kind of hard to tell actually whether this is supposed to be a person kind of hiding behind one of the horses, or if it's actually like like the horse is holding the sword. But I like that the image is all horses. There's no person in that knight. That's kind of cool to me. You will find like some of the imagery somewhat confronting. It's not really a gory deck, but I think that word confronting is probably the right one. Love that the Emperor is a mountain, but it's also kind of, I think it's maybe the figure's dress and it's a mountain. So I love that the Emperor actually has a little bit of a feminine energy as well as that. I think a mountain is a perfect natural description for the Emperor. This Chariot card comes up for me a lot, and I really like that energy of the bike. So yeah, I mean, I could show this whole deck. I'm not going to. I'm sure there are places where you could see this whole deck, but hopefully these examples have given you an idea. It's just every image has a lot to work through, a lot to think through. It's not traditional Rider Waite at all, but it's not pippish either. There's just a lot of content to each individual card, and I find that just sitting with, when I do a reading with one of these, just sitting with the individual cards I get and thinking about everything that might be contained within them is a really great exercise. So again, this was the Dark Days Tarot by Wren McMurdo. I'm pretty sure it's still available. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment below to let me know what other decks you'd like to see reviewed on the channel.